Nothing says true love like unemployed, homeless, multi-jurisdictional violent crime sprees. That's not a legend. That's a Tuesday in Florida.
We interrupt your doom scrolling to bring you the following public service announcement.
Bonnie and Clyde are not a Pinterest power couple, and we need to stop glorifying them.
Y'all got her all worked up now.
I'm serious. Look, I know I'm the last person qualified to lecture anyone on delusional fantasies, but just hear me out. Every few decades, we dust them off, slap their names on t-shirts, and act like they were Romeo and Juliet with better outfits. No. They were emotionally unstable, chronically unemployed degenerates who left a trail of dead bodies that would make a Mexican drug cartel blush. They weren't rebels, they weren't anti-heroes, they were just two trigger-happy, terminally horny 20-somethings trauma-bonded over a shared hatred of authority and an unhealthy amount of free time.
Okay, but same.
They were what happens when a situationship gets access to automatic firearms and a getaway car. But because they took a couple black and white photos holding guns and cigars, we decided that was aesthetic. We turned them into Halloween costumes, Tumblr poetry, matching tattoos, because nothing says true love like unemployed, homeless, multi-jurisdictional violent crime sprees. Welcome to It's Giving Murder, where romance is dead and so is half the cast. I'm Vivian Hart.
Love you, bitch.
And today we're tearing the rose-colored filter off the blood-soaked reality of Bonnie and Clyde. We're headed to the Dust Bowl. The geographic location, not my vagina. Before she became the poster child for down bad, Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was just another small-town girl with a flair for dramatics and a tragic, insatiable girl boner for red flags. She was born October 1st, 1910, in Rowena, Texas, which sounds cute but was basically one tumbleweed away from being uninhabitable. Her dad, Charles Parker, died in a construction accident when she was 4. Eventually, her mother Emma packed up her 3 kids and moved to Cement City, just west of downtown Dallas. Just a single mother living it up in a world before pocket vibrators in Cement City. Kill me. In her formative years, Bonnie was tiny, talkative, and, like all of us, thought she was destined for something bigger, which, technically, she was. She liked poetry, she liked literature, she liked attention.
Am I Bonnie?
And she loved the idea of being somebody, becoming an icon. But instead of Broadway or Beverly Hills, our little Miss Misery chose a more traditional route, marrying a habitual violent felon at 15 years old. His name was Roy Thornton, and, spoiler alert, he sucked. After a little over a year, Bonnie and Roy separated after Bonnie caught Roy cheating in December 1927. They never got back together, but they never divorced either. In fact, Bonnie was wearing her wedding ring from Roy on the day she died, riding shotgun with perhaps the most well-known sneaky link of all time.
I thought we were supposed to be hating this bitch.
Bonnie moves back in with Mom, who is still thriving in Cement City, by the way, as an 18-year-old divorcee, working as a dishwasher at a local diner. As 1929 came to an end, batshit Bonnie was feeling hopeless, lost, and disappointed in how her life had turned out. She wanted more. On January 5th, 1930, Bonnie was visiting a friend at her boyfriend's house. According to legend, Bonnie was girl maxing in the kitchen, making some cozy hot chocolate on a cold January morning. As she was serving housewife in the kitchen, in walks a therapist's wet dream by the name of Clyde Chestnut Barrow. Our damsel of doom was digmatized from the jump by a petty thief with bedroom eyes. No soft launch, no looking back, and still married. I'm well-versed in self-sabotage, but this bitch is a Hall of Famer. So who was this man that Bonnie threw away her entire life for in less time than it takes me to respond to a "you up" text from my ex at 3:27 a.m.? Clyde Barrow was born on March 24th, 1909 in Ellis County, Texas, the fifth of 8 kids in a family so poor they couldn't even afford dreams. They were dirt farmers, and I mean literally farming dirt, until they moved to West Dallas and upgraded to a tent. Not a Coachella glamping tent, actual tent on the side of the road. Tragic? Absolutely. An excuse to become one of the absolute worst human beings of the 20th century? Please. Clyde Barrow was nothing more than a boy who refused to grow up and decided to take out his frustrations with the world on everyone around him, and I mean everyone. It's giving devil-worshipping Peter Pan with a Napoleon complex. Horny yet? So he started stealing little things at first. Turkeys, bikes, cars people worked their entire lives for. You know, the gateway crimes. By 17, Clyde had graduated from petty theft to full-blown menace. Gas stations, grocery stores, family-owned businesses barely surviving the Depression. Clyde didn't care. If it wasn't nailed down, he stole it. And if it was nailed down, he took the damn nails too. Clyde gets released from his first stint in county and crashes at a friend's house while he plans how he can further contribute to society. One day, he comes home after volunteering at the local Salvation Army and meets a nice, charming young woman named batshit Bonnie Parker. I've never heard of competitive codependency speedrunning, but these two set a world record. Within a week of meeting, Clyde was arrested again. Bonnie takes on the prison wife role without missing a beat, with a twist. Instead of letters and cookies, this bitch smuggles her man in a gun. Bonnie was in full-blown dick withdrawal hysteria. Quite a jump to make from never committing a crime to committing, 12 at once. Clyde escapes and almost immediately gets caught. This time he's sentenced to 14 years at East Ham Prison Farm, which was basically Texas's version of hell, but with more mosquitoes and butt stuff.
Did she just say butt stuff?
It's unclear where Bonnie goes during this period, but I think it's safe to assume she was going clit crazy without her man around. Much like the outside world, Clyde had a special gift for pissing off his fellow inmates too. He's abused, broken, and primed for his big return to society. Poor little Clyde hates penitentiary life, especially the being held accountable for his actions part. Some historians love to blame this period of his life for what comes next, like he wasn't already showing some concerning felonious fuckboy tendencies. He eventually has another inmate chop 2 toes off to avoid hard labor. That's not a metaphor. Homeboy literally said, "I would rather lose parts of my body than clock in." And honestly, that's the most commitment he ever showed to anything. What he didn't know is his mother's appeal for his pardon had been granted and he was going to be released after only serving 2 years. If you aren't already familiar with the story, prison had a very positive impact on Clyde. And poor Bonnie had become feral from a 2-year dick-deficient diet. They reunite and officially form the Barrow Gang. The love vultures steal a car and begin one of the most violent reigns of terror of the 20th century. They acquire guns by robbing National Guard armories and police stations. It's the audacity for me. They're not criminal masterminds either. This isn't Ocean's 11. They're sloppy, loud, and usually bleeding. But when Clyde upgrades to banks, so does the body count. Let's talk facts. They killed store owners, cops, people sleeping in their homes, anyone who flinched wrong or stood between them and the exit. And every time they got away, they grew bolder, meaner, sloppier. Batshit Bonnie wasn't some tragic accomplice. She wrote bad poetry about dying together, posed for photos holding shotguns and cigars, and rode shotgun while Clyde drove like the rules of gravity didn't apply to him. They weren't rebels, they weren't misunderstood. They were 2 bottom-shelf losers with delusions of grandeur playing dress-up in a stolen car while bodies stacked up behind them. And America? America fell in love with them. Because why the fuck wouldn't we? Not for what they did, but for how they looked doing it. Because apparently, if your mugshot has good lighting and a black and white filter, you're not a murderer. You're iconic. Ew! By 1933, Bonnie and Clyde had officially gone from petty criminals to full-blown public enemies. And America couldn't get enough. The Barrow Gang was in full swing, Clyde behind the wheel, Bonnie riding shotgun, and a rotating cast of brothers, drifters, and disposable sidekicks who all had one thing in common: terrible instincts. In April 1933, they rented an apartment in Joplin, Missouri. A cute little hideout with wood paneling, empty beer bottles, and cigarette butts on the floor. Very posh. When police showed up after receiving a tip, a shootout erupted so violent it could have passed for a war reenactment. 2 officers were killed. Bonnie and Clyde escaped, barely, leaving behind weapons, handwritten poetry, and a roll of undeveloped film. That film? Those were the photos, the ones that made them legends. Bonnie with her foot on a car bumper pointing a gun at Clyde. Clyde in his Sunday best, holding a rifle like it was a fashion accessory. They were smiling, posing, cosplaying their own delusion. And the public ate it up. Suddenly, Bonnie and Clyde weren't just killers. They were celebrities, radio-worthy, headline-worthy, poster children for the unhinged romanticism of the era. People sent them fan mail, wrote songs, named babies after them, all while they kept killing. At this point, they were wanted in multiple states. The FBI was involved. Law enforcement was mobilizing. But the Barrow Gang kept moving, seemingly always one step ahead of justice. By now, they'd killed at least 9 law enforcement officers and dozens of others. Yet the headlines still read like fan fiction, still called it love. But like all murder-filled sexcapades, the end of the blood orgy was inching closer and closer by the day. By early 1934, the Bonnie and Clyde fan club was starting to shrink. The glamour was fading, the bodies were stacking, and law enforcement, they were done playing. After nearly 2 years on the run, Clyde Barrow had graduated from cocky car thief to full-blown domestic terrorist. Armed robberies, explosions, highway shootouts that made newspapers question if World War III had quietly started in rural Oklahoma. And Bonnie, still there, still riding shotgun, still scribbling love poems in between shootouts like it was giving jailhouse Tumblr core. But behind the scenes, the noose was tightening. Enter Henry Methvin, a Barrow Gang tag-along with all the loyalty of a houseplant and the IQ to match. He was the weak link, the tag-along, the plus one no one wanted, except Clyde, who needed warm bodies and faster reloads. When Methvin killed a highway patrolman in April 1934, Clyde's crime spree hit a new level of unsalvageable. At this point, Texas Ranger Frank Hamer was already on the hunt. He'd been tracking them for months, studying their routes, routines, and favorite diners to rob. And when Hamer realized Methvin's family might be the key to setting a trap, game on. The setup was simple. Promise Henry Methvin immunity, get his family to play bait, lure Bonnie and Clyde to a rural road outside Gibbsland, Louisiana. Surgical. Final. And on the morning of May 23, 1934, Bonnie and Clyde pulled onto a dirt road in their stolen Ford, expecting a reunion with Henry's dad. What they got instead? Hellfire. 6 officers hiding in the brush. Rifles, shotguns, preloaded hate. They didn't shout a warning. They didn't give them a chance. They just opened fire. Over 130 rounds of ammunition ripped through the car in less than 20 seconds. Clyde was killed instantly. Headshot, slumped at the wheel. Bonnie screamed, then she didn't. When the smoke cleared, the scene was grotesque. Their bodies were barely recognizable. And just like that, it was over. No final words, no poetic last stand, just 2 bullet-riddled corpses in a ditch and a blood-stained myth that would only grow bigger from there. You'd think the brutal, bloody execution of 2 wanted killers would bring a little closure, some justice, maybe a moment of national reflection. But no, this is America. We turned it into a traveling circus. Within minutes of the ambush, locals descended on the bullet-riddled death scene like it was Black Friday at Target. People were dipping handkerchiefs in Bonnie and Clyde's blood, ripping locks of their hair out as souvenirs. One woman tried to cut off Clyde's ear. Another attempted to steal the trigger finger off his corpse. You cannot make this up. Meanwhile, their bodies were loaded up and hauled to different funeral homes, each one trying to cash in on the chaos. To put it bluntly, America canonized them. Songs were written, films were made, tabloids printed their love story like it was a Nicholas Sparks novel soaked in gasoline. Even the car they died in, put on display at carnivals and casinos, still touring today, bullet holes and all. Because nothing says true love like gore and capitalistic nostalgia. And let's be clear, this wasn't about honoring them. This was about us. Our obsession with dangerous people who look good in black and white. Our need to rewrite history so we can turn blood into branding and trauma into TikTok trends. Bonnie and Clyde weren't heroes, they weren't tragic, they weren't complicated. They were just two reckless narcissists who confused adrenaline with intimacy and made everyone else pay the price. Nearly a century later, we're still talking about Bonnie and Clyde, not because they were brilliant, not because they were brave, but because they looked cool holding guns and vintage clothes. Their love story gets dragged out every few years, dusted off like it's a Shakespearean tragedy. We ignore the fact that they were violent, messy, and dumb as hell because aesthetic. Because America will forgive anything if the cheekbones are high and the photos are black and white. We've got rap lyrics named after them. Lingerie lines, tattoo designs, people still dressing up as them for Halloween, like they're not literally cosplaying two real-life murderers. Meanwhile, the victims, the store clerks, the cops, the families they shattered, forgotten. No movie deals, no cult following, no Instagram edits set to Lana Del Rey. So let's be clear, Bonnie and Clyde weren't ride or die. They were just riding. And a lot of people died. They were reckless, they were self-absorbed, and most of all, they were nothing new. A toxic relationship with firearms and a failed getaway plan. That's not a legend. That's a Tuesday in Florida. So the next time someone says they want to love like Bonnie and Clyde, ask them which part. The poverty, the manhunt, or the 130 bullets that ended the whole thing. As always, it's giving murder. Because sometimes the real killer is your type.